thank you. I kind of leaned into this theme of the pajama party and the truth or dare edition. So I've got two big truths for you. One, I am really enjoying wearing pajamas a whole lot more than I would have expected. I think I might, when I have Zoom off camera, I might break out the robe a little bit more frequently. And two, even though I study the tests that are given in biology classes, I kind of hate the tests that are given in biology classes. A lot of times they're just really bad, like they kind of suck. And they focus on these little tiny itty bitty details, and they're not really kind of connecting to that more meaningful kind of aspects of biology, to copy Jocelyn's words earlier. And they just kind of focus on these little trivia facts and don't really get at the big picture. So let me kind of show you an example of what I'm talking about. This is a question I pulled off of Chegg, which means that it is a question that some poor student out there was so desperate for an answer for that they kind of reached out to the ethers of the internet, hoping that somebody would tell them how many carbons are in the metabolite alpha-ketoglutarate. And for a little bit of background, I used to teach high school biology, and I would never do pop quizzes. Like, pop quizzes are terrible. Nobody should be doing them. But I'm going to lean into the teacher trope and kind of use that now. And I'm going to ask everybody to be a little bit brave. And if you don't know the answer to this question, if you can use raise a hand in your little Zoom video or use a reaction emoji. And I will say, as somebody who has a degree in biology and is pursuing a PhD in biology, like, I unashamedly am raising my hand. Before I looked up the answer, thanks to Chegg, I was like, I don't know. I don't even know what an alpha-ketoglutarate is. And I'm sure this is something that I had covered in my biology classes in college. And the answer is 5, if you're curious. But does this kind of mean anything to anybody who's graduated from a introductory level biology course? Probably not. We've lost so much context as to why alpha-ketogglutarates are part of the citric acid cycle and why that's an important thing and why citric acid cycle is even important in the first place. So I went through college and I kind of did well on tests like this. I kind of knew that if tests could just ask me to memorize questions, and I could memorize them and do pretty good at it. And I got through college like that. Not too proud of it, but I did. And I found myself entering this cycle of learning and forgetting and learning and forgetting. So I'd usually start these classes where I wouldn't know too much, and somebody would lecture at me about some topic, and usually just talk at me without too much engagement. And I'd go back to my dorm room and I'd kind of bust out the old Campbell biology, the standby classic. And I would also like to recopy my notes. That was kind of my preferred method of studying. And again, just focusing on memorizing, shoving all these things into my short-term memory so I could do well on the test. And I would kind of take the test, walk out the door, everything would fall out the back of my brain up until the point where oh shoot, this is going to be on the final. So I have to put all the information back into my brain. And I'd do okay on the final. Probably not great, but enough to pass the class. And I would end up at this point where I don't know anything again. And that was kind of it got me through college, but then I started teaching high school, and I was at this point where I don't know anything. I would be responsible for teaching about the citric acid cycle myself. And I'm I don't remember these steps. So I had to go back to good old Campbell here and just learn everything again. And then I would learn it the night before I was teaching it. And then I would teach it to these students who were just learning it to take a test. And they're going to forget it as soon as the test was done. I was I'm just perpetuating this cycle. And that's not something I really want to do. That's kind of a really bad practice for teaching science. So I started here at UNL, and I'm working on a project that's called Characterizing Assessments in Introductory Biology. And as when I download my files from Qualtrics, this is how they show up, characterizing ass. So I have the sense of humor of the high school students I used to teach. And this is what shows up on my screen in the little kind of abbreviated file download characterizing ass. And that's my life now. But I'm going to stop sharing and kind of talk to you more one-on-one, kind of make this screen big for everybody again. And so I'm studying these biology tests, and what I'm realizing is that digging through the literature and kind of collecting my own data, my experience in college was not unique. A lot of the tests that are out there, especially at the introductory level, kind of focus on these memorized facts. Can you just spit back information? And it's not just in biology either. It happens in chemistry and physics courses too. And this is a problem. When we think about what we're training up a STEM workforce to do, you don't want to end up with a bunch of people like me who enter a career and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. And so changing how we think about our tests is one way to really change what's going on for our future scientists. If we signal what's important in a class and what are like the most key things you need to know to do well in a class, and we're just saying it's just a list of memorized facts, that's not great. We really want to ask students to engage in science, think of it as like a verb, and ask them to analyze data and to make their own hypotheses and to construct arguments and look at graphs and interpret like what these data points mean. But a lot of times we aren't quite doing that on the test that we are kind of giving students. And there's a few reasons for that. There's not really a great support system in here for instructors. If we like had magic wands and like could snap our fingers and all of a sudden today change all the tests that we're giving to these like quote unquote better tests. We don't have the time for instructors to grade these tests, first of all. Like who's going to sit there and grade 300 open-ended kind of constructing argument type questions? And most instructors don't have the time for that. And if they're having somebody else do it, like a TA, they have to pay those TAs to grade those papers. And where does that money come from? And instructors need some support system for kind of knowing what good questions look like and some professional development. A lot of times they don't quite get that. And on the student side too, we need to change student expectations. If students all of a sudden take these like good tests and they had prepared for it only by memorizing, they're going to have a real tough time. They're not going to do so well. And they're not going to be happy with the score that they get because they've never really had a lot of opportunities to practice and use these higher order skills that these kind of better tests would ask them to do. So there's a path forward, and we know that there are things that we can change to kind of improve our tests and eventually improve science education. There can be really difficult paths forward. We need some support systems in place. But I think any paths that are moving away from those alpha-ketoglutarate and moving away from these memorized test questions are going to be steps that are in the right direction. So thank you and enjoy the rest of the night.